The Martha May Eliot Award honors a professional worker from the field of maternal and child health. This award is to honor unusual achievements in the field, to bring such achievements to the eyes of related professionals and the public, and to inspire young people in the field. This year's Martha May Eliot Award is given to Dr. Claire Brindis, a distinguished emerita professor of pediatrics and health policy on recall, and emerita director of the Philip R. Lee Institute for Health Policy Studies at the University of California, San Francisco. Dr. Brindis was one of the founding directors of the Bixby Center for Global Reproductive Health and is also the co-director of the Adolescent and Young Adult Health National Resource Center, funded by MCHB. As a bilingual, bicultural Latinx researcher, Dr. Brindis's research focuses on ameliorating the impact of social, health, and economic disparities among ethnic and racial populations, with a particular focus on women and adolescents. Dr. Brindis's research focuses on closing the gap between evidence-based innovation and its application to policy and programs. As a policy advisor to federal, state, and local policymakers and private foundations, her research has been utilized extensively in the planning of state and federal initiatives, including the implementation of the first school-based health centers in California and Colorado. Brindis also co-authored Advocacy and Policy Change Evaluation, Theory and Practice. Dr. Brindis is an elected member of the National Academy of Medicine, NAM, and serves on the NAM Council. Among a number of NAM research committee panels on which she has served over the past 20 years, most noteworthy was service on the Institute of Medicine, now NAM, Committee on Preventive Health Services for Women, which developed recommendations for preventive services for women without co-payments. These were formally adopted as part of the ACA, and as a result, over 100 million women have benefited from preventive health services. Truly an outstanding leader for the MCH and public health fields, I am honored to present the 2020 Martha May Eliot Award to Dr. Claire Brindis.
Thank you so very much. Words are inadequate to capture my deep gratitude for this very special, personal, and professional award. For those of you who know me well and my love of the Academy Awards, this award really represents, as close as I will get, my pinnacle. I have so many people to thank, and in particular, I want to spotlight Milt Kotichuk, who himself is an award winner of this prestigious award, for his dedication in putting together my nomination packet. I also want to thank two other award winners, Deborah Klein and Kay Johnson, for their support, as well as Nancy Adler, Trina Anglin, Wendy Davis, Charles Irwin, Michael Liu, Marissa Raymond Flesch, and Jean Washington. I want to share a few slides with you at this moment. There are two other individuals that I'd like to acknowledge. One is Phil Lee, who has been a lifelong mentor to me. And also I want to recognize the many contributions of Martha May Eliot to the field of maternal and child health. Both of these tremendous visionary individuals not only were pioneers, but they also were devoted to lifelong mentoring. I'm very proud to be able to carry your baton. I could really spend the next several days thanking so many individuals, including my family, my friends, my professional colleagues, for their confidence in me, as well as their generosity of spirit, which has shaped my life in innumerable ways. Just last year, I wrote thank you notes once a week to 52 of these heroes, and I can tell you that the list remains very long. While I deeply regret that we can't be together to celebrate in person, I'm also most grateful for the technology that enables us to be all together. And before I share my remarks, I'd like to begin by acknowledging that I'm presenting from ancestral Ramaytush Ohlone land in San Francisco. Through a great deal of luck, historical circumstance, and good fortune, I've had the privilege of being able to transform challenging childhood experiences as a Latina immigrant into a personally meaningful academic career that has focused on the translation of research into policy, programs, and advocacy. This career builds on my childhood idealism and rather naive vision that I wanted to save the world. At such a crucial moment in our collective lives and the time allotted, I would like to share 7 hard-earned lessons gained in my personal odyssey as a policy translator and interpreter. But before I do, I want to share a bit about my background so that you can understand why this career has been so important to me. All of our lives are shaped by the decisions and the historical context of our ancestors, as well as their deeply personal sacrifices which set our life pathways. I most often reflect on my grandmother, Clara, who I'm named after, and who pushed my 19-year-old father, Walt, to leave Germany in 1939, almost too late, so that his life could be spared while she and many other family members perished in the Holocaust. I'm also grateful to my grandparents, Joseph and Miriam, who left Poland and settled in Argentina as a result of religious persecution. The US decision to no longer accept Jews led my father, Walt, to end up in Buenos Aires, where he met my mother, Lucy. And shortly after they met, he told her of his dream of living in the US. And 17 years later, we settled in Cleveland, Ohio. Life transformative and a particularly challenging one for me as a non-English speaker, a very sensitive 8-year-old who was soon intensely bullied in a very non-tolerant world. While I was clearly blessed and nurtured by my parents, my own personal safety net, there are always fears that my father's 3 jobs would not be sufficient to keep us financially safe and secure, as well as the impact of the undiagnosed postpartum depression experienced by my mom shortly after my dear brother George was born. Up to this day, I carry the searing pain of those years, and they clearly shaped my lifelong interest in immigrants and other marginalized populations, as well as the impact of uncertain economic status. 5 years later, my family successfully migrated to Los Angeles. Both of my parents eventually became court translators, and their stories of the unequal burden shouldered by low-income populations fed my ideal of pursuing a career in social work. I also learned firsthand the difference between being a translator and an interpreter, skills that have helped me throughout my career. Important historical events occurred during this time, including the availability of the birth control pill, the federal Title X family planning program, and the Roe v. Wade decision. All of these dramatically changed the trajectory of my own life. What I soon discovered was what could be more empowering and moral than helping women and men decide whether or not to bear children, and if they were to have them, when and how many to have. As the first in my family to attend college, I was most fortunate to attend UCLA for my bachelor's degree and my master's degree in public health. In fact, I joined APHA as a student in 1972. I also worked in the Barrio Free Clinic and a number of other family planning clinics with the goal of becoming a manager of a family planning clinic. In 1971, I met my dear husband, Ralph, as he too was pursuing his master's in public health before attending medical school. Shortly after his graduation and my own in maternal and child health, family planning, and international health, we moved to Atlanta, Georgia, where Ralph attended Emory Medical School. This is a photograph of Grady Memorial Hospital. And in the first year of living in Atlanta, I had the great fortune to work with Bob Hatcher, father of contraceptive technology. I staffed a Blue Ribbon Commission on teenage pregnancy and later coordinated a citywide conference held in 1974. This reinforced my passion for protecting adolescents' access to high quality, confidential care, which has been a lifelong cause. I was also very fortunate to continue my relationship in working with Bob Hatcher while I pivoted to a tremendous opportunity of being on the faculty as an assistant professor at Emory University School of Allied Health, teaching health policy and health issues. Some of you may not know that this is a #1 parking sticker, and I can tell you that while this was a benefit to a faculty member, it really made Ralph the big man on the campus. In 1977, we migrated to San Francisco, where Ralph began his internship and I began my doctorate. But before we migrated, I earned an MRS degree as wife of Doctor of Medicine for my affection and support. Now, while these words are very meaningful, I can also assure you that Emory University no longer gives out this degree. And this is a photo of myself on the day of my graduation from the School of Public Health at Berkeley with my doctorate in behavioral sciences and public health. We had both of our children during that time, and behind me is Seth Brindis at age 4, while Daniel Brindis, unfortunately, is not in this photo because he's home with the chickenpox. So let me now turn to some of the lessons that I'd like to share with you. And lesson #1 is fuel your passion and find your North Star. Accept the nonlinear pathways of our lives and the richness of the diverse issues that are reflected in our wonderful, impactful world of public health. The North Star will really drive your activities. And I can say to you that you will be navigating uncharted waters, but be careful of diluting your efforts, attempting to lead in too many topics at any one time. Weave your North Stars throughout your work and look for opportunities to amplify and advance your policy agenda. Remain optimistic throughout this uncharted pathway and journey. I was very fortunate that I had the opportunity to help lead in the evaluation of the family planning program in California, which provides culturally sensitive and responsive family planning services to low-income populations. This experience led me to serve on the Institute of Medicine's Preventive Services for Women, and we made 8 important preventive healthcare recommendations, including the provision of birth control and the provision of an annual preventive visit without any co-payment. And I've been very fortunate to see how impactful this North Star contributed to over 100 million women receiving such preventive services since the implementation of the ACA. Yet, I remembered very well that in previous era, I was involved in preventing the dismantling of the family planning program, which really was so discouraging given California's long history of providing subsidized care. We conducted some of the earliest family planning cost-benefit studies on the impact of such policy decisions and joined forces with advocacy community members who used our university-based study to push back successfully against the governor's proposal. Ironically, the subsequent Republican governor used the same analysis to add another $10 million to the state family planning budget. Lesson 2, gain mastery and establish your credibility. Develop your authentic research and academic chops, as well as your street cred. Use rigorous research methods and be aware of your conscious and unconscious biases. Check your assumptions at the door and be careful from jumping to conclusions. This means reporting on results even when the results don't reflect your assumptions or you wish that the results were different. Be honest and maintain your professional integrity. Remember that your reputation is your commodity. So I've been very fortunate that our work on Latina childbearing, as well as work on acculturation and border health, as well as inequities, prepared us to conduct some of the first research that was conducted with dreamers to document their mental and physical health needs. And this led to a study with Hispanics in Philanthropy that was conducted with community-based organizations to document the many ways that they're working on ameliorating inequity and helping on social justice issues. Lesson 3, understand your audience. Find new ways of learning from lived experiences, diverse disciplines and fields, as well as developing messages that resonate with each sector using different types of communication channels. As an example of respecting and engaging youth voice, we trained high school youth research teams associated with school-based health centers in Oakland, California. We worked to prepare them with a range of skills, from developing their own research questions and ways to best collect information through data analysis and writing up their results. But we also enhanced their capacity and confidence in presenting their results to the school board. As a result, where we as adults had advocated for years for additional mental health services on campus and had failed miserably, youth leaders were far more successful in compelling policymakers to action. Lesson 4, search for windows of policy opportunities. Research plays a very vital role in shaping the development of policies, but it also plays a key role in evaluating whether or not policy has been implemented with fidelity and its original intent. It also gives you an opportunity to answer the question whether the resources that were allocated were too weak for that policy to succeed. We were able to do some work having to do with teenage pregnancy, and this is an example of taking a small step that may have long-term consequences. California state advocates build on a state law that if schools provided sex education on a voluntary basis, that it needed to be comprehensive, preventing then the acceptance by state government agencies of federally funded abstinence-only education. As a result of this law, we were looking at how well did this policy get implemented. And this report then led to a lawsuit against a school district for being out of compliance. In fact, the judge ruled that the education being offered to young people was actually dangerous to them. This decision led to additional state policy actions mandating comprehensive education for every student in California. And in a state where 1 out of 8 adolescents who lives in the US lives in our state, that has consequences. Lesson 5, commit yourself to dissemination, diffusion, and implementation science. Dissemination and diffusion recognize that compelling data alone will not build a movement. You will need to consider different ways to get your message out. Just publishing a peer-reviewed journal article will likely not be very successful in assuring use of that knowledge or uptake of that knowledge. Knowledge is clearly imperative, but insufficient to make sustained change. And in the field of implementation sciences, there are great opportunities to close some gaps between the availability of evidence and practice. It enables us to study how to best implement programs and why progress occurs and does not occur. This is critical in meeting our common agenda of improving the nation's health. After all, how many of us have shared extensive data findings on the glaring inequalities between Black, Brown, urban, rural, LGBT, and many other populations, but we were truly unable to make a dent until the greater society could be more fully confronting such issues as systematic racism. We developed not only peer-reviewed journal articles, but we created a number of different policy briefs, as well as translating that data down to the county level. I was also very happy to have the opportunity of reviewing the document here left, the Improving Adolescent Health, the purple document, which gave me an opportunity to review a decade's worth of Blue Ribbon Commission reports. 36 reports, and there were 1,000 recommendations. And I must admit to you that very few of these recommendations had ever been implemented. Thus, when we began to work with the CDC in working on the 21 critical health objectives for the nation's health, I advocated to develop a practical guidebook so that communities could concretely advance their efforts to improve adolescent health. Be prepared to set aside your own ego needs and understand that it may be more effective for you to remain in the background so that your academic expertise can be quoted by others, while at other times, clearly be the drum major in front of the line. And join and respect partnerships. Build powerful relationships among communities, researchers, government, the public sector, and other stakeholders and communicators to promote collaboration and to translate research into action. Combine even limited resources for the greater good. Consider the role of unusual bedfellows who may help to carry the message to new stakeholders, building upon their own reputation, their own energy, and commitment. In turn, consider how you will support them as you leverage each other's credibility. Sow your seeds carefully and tend to your garden. Always consider, who are we leaving behind? Who is not at the table? Nurture your efforts at building opportunities where young transplants can thrive. And commit yourself to mentoring the next generation who will carry the baton into the future. Lesson 6, remain vigilant and nimble. The dog, by the way, is a watchdog, but I decided to have a very friendly watchdog for this event. Your work is really never done. While you may bask for a moment of sweet victory in achieving a policy success, do not sit on any laurels. Be assured that those who oppose the mission or the work will be hard at work themselves, whether it's in the area of abortion rights, lack of sufficient funding for reproductive or maternal and child health programs, or other public health problems. Like this Japanese swordsman, remain at the cutting edge, even if you get bloodied sometimes, and look forward to the next wave of emerging issues. Who would have thought that our work on the Adolescent Strategic Plan for California would have contributed to putting ourselves in a position to hold congressional briefings on the unique needs of adolescents as part of healthcare reform? And we conducted these federal hearings as the ACA was being developed. Or who would have thought that our work on family planning would enable us to speak publicly about the need for additional reproductive care in a time of Zika? Or that our mission regarding disparities would translate into assessing the non-medical consequences of COVID-19. Lesson 7, commit yourself to serving as a moral authority. In a time of alternative facts, the routine abuse of science, expansion of mis and myth information, as well as the unraveling of many of my passionate topics, we need to recognize and relentlessly engage in bringing evidence to bear on policy decision. Recognize that many want to discount evidence and wish to turn the clock back because they fear that knowledge can be dangerous. None of us can afford to lose our values or our voice. And if you have no values, you have no value. The DNA strands that link your passion to pressing population health problems and public health issues, whether it's the availability of comprehensive services for chemically dependent pregnant women, or the needs of dreamers, or the indirect effects of COVID on low-income communities, are all interconnected. Their common threads are related to social justice, ameliorating the impact of inequality and building a new, just society. But do not be surprised if you have Sisyphus moments in your career. and recognize, however, that each time we do not begin from the very beginning. Even inches or centimeters are huge. And when it's only feasible to light a candle to get us through the darkness, even a small light allows us to serve as beacons and safe harbors. You have been such a tremendous audience that I'm going to give you a bonus lesson, probably the very most important lesson of my life. And that is strive for work-life balance. I've been incredibly blessed with having wonderful children who are now themselves having their own families, Seth and Stephanie, and our grandchildren, Violet and Elias, and Daniel and Amalia, and their children, Noemi and Joaquin. And I've been very blessed to have the support and love and nurturing of my lifelong partner. So in a time of great controversy, it's very important to remember the message of the Wizard of Oz. This is a time of tremendous need for heart, for brains, and for courage. And I want to stop my sharing just to give a final word, which is, I want to express my gratitude to all of you. And my last name, Brindis, in Spanish, means to make a toast. So if I can pretend that I have an honorary goblet, I want to make a toast to all of you who are dedicated to the tremendous challenges of improving the public's health. Thank you so very much for this honor.